personal. Well, it says that it's being
It's being live streamed.
Okay. Well, here we go. Oh, it says it's private. I hope I didn't set it up to private.
See, that's something that I need to learn. Sometimes they ask us to record or like, and I'm like, no sabo. I don't know how to do that.
It says that it's streaming, but it says that it's set to private. So I'm hoping that people are able to log in and see it. But let me log in through a different settings to see if it's playing. Live. Let's see it. Where is it? If it's playing. Live. Let's see it. Where?
Ma, do you have an eraser? It's not working.
Public. Okay. No, all right. It says that it is public. I don't know why it gave me a message saying that it was set to private, but we're good. Okay. Guys, I'm not sure how many more people are going to show. There's Sandy, our faithful Sandy and Jennifer. They never fail. You guys are always here. Make me happy. Oh, it was so cool. So cool. Hi, Sandy.
Looks like she's trying to connect to the audio.
I think
there she is.
Yeah, Sandy messaged me that she was going to join us and her camera was going to be off. Hey, if I was up on the beach or something, my camera would probably be off. So I'm glad Sandy's here. I know you guys are taking time from your summer to join us, so that's so cool.
And you do have like real, like not like here in Texas.
My flight was delayed yesterday. I didn't make it home until like 3 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
I know it was a long flight because I had a connection from Texas to here. So I make it here, and then at 9 o'clock I wake up and I didn't realize that I had scheduled to take my daughter to a fairy garden activity at the library. So I jump in a shower. I'm like, we gotta go.
I went to the zoo today.
Saw your pictures. Oh, see, those times with our children are so special.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get her out of the house, because she's a teenager. Yeah. So she likes to stay up really, really late and then sleep all day, like all morning and afternoon. And I'm like, no, we're gonna do some things.
Yes, and I'm glad you have the same thinking. Like, if we wouldn't find anything for them to do, they find themselves something to do, but it's either on their screen or sleeping.
Sleeping. I'm like, we're gonna try it on the days that I'm not teaching. I'm like,
I am so glad. I'm so glad
we have to take advantage of those moments, because like my kids are 20 and 19, and I have to go by myself and my husband.
I'm telling you, yes,
you have to cherish those moments now that they're little.
Absolutely. I do agree. Yes, I was able to have some coffee with my son while I was in Houston, but
I saw
those. Yeah, you just got to take advantage of those few minutes, when they're all growing up and moved on. And so while you have them at home, you got to take advantage of those those moments there too. But
Yeah.
since this is being recorded, we're gonna go ahead and get started if you don't mind. I mean, I know a lot of people have this link. They're gonna go ahead. I see there's Sandy sending her message. I know, Sandy, we know you're here. We love you being here. Thank you for joining us. And I have the honor and the pleasure to here today from Esmeralda, Cartagena, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself just because I know you just from Twitter, and that's really, I wish I knew more now that we're starting to connect, and I know your passion. We need to this conversation from a friend to a friend. So I'll leave it all up to you, Esmeralda. Go ahead and tell us about yourself and what do you have here for us today?
Thank you so much. I connected with Emily actually during the pandemic. We were actually reading the same book about immigrants from South America. So my name is Esmeralda Cartagena. I am currently living in Arlington, Texas. I am an instructional specialist for the Department of World Languages in Arlington, ISD. And I am also a doctoral student for Texas Women's University, pursuing a PhD in literacy, language, and culture, which is my passion. And I'm here to share with you how you can honor the languages and culture of newcomer students in the classroom. I am newcomer myself, and this is something that we're going to talk in the presentation. And I'm going to start with our learning objectives today. So we have our content, our language objective, and our culture. And I don't know if you do this in the classroom, but in Texas, this is something that we are pushing a lot in the classroom, just to honor the languages and the culture of the students in the classroom and provide those linguistic accommodations. So we're going to understand the importance of using culturally and linguistically relevant text in the classroom. Our language objective is discuss and analyze the impact of this text on the language and the culture integration of newcomer students. And our cultural objective is foster appreciation and respect for the diverse languages and cultures of newcomer students, and to encourage the adoption of inclusive practices that honor and celebrate the students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds within your educational setting, if it's in a newcomer classroom or it's in a middle school, high school, elementary. So we don't have a lot of people right now, but I would like you to introduce yourself in the chat by sharing with us your role in education. What grade levels do you serve and where? I believe you all are in the same school district.
Nope, I am in Michigan.
Oh, great. And Sandy, where are you from? North Carolina, Michigan, and Sandy, where are you from?
She lives in Florida.
Oh,
when I went down to Fort Myers over spring break this year, I got to meet her. We met for breakfast because she lives in Fort Myers.
So I know that Miss Francis, she teaches high school. You teach 3rd grade or 5th grade, and Sandy teaches, I believe, maybe middle school or something. So I taught elementary. I taught kinder through 9th grade, and in every single classroom that I had newcomer students, and I was a newcomer myself. So like I mentioned before, my name is Esmeralda Cartagena Collazo, like Cartagena, like the city in Colombia. I am not Colombian. I am a graduate of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education. My specialty is in ESL. My master's in education is in curriculum and instruction. And my specialty also in ESL. I completed a literacy postgraduate degree at TWU, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in literacy, language, and culture. I am starting my 6th year in education, and like I mentioned before, I taught kinder to 9th grade ELAR ESL. I taught in Puerto Rico, I taught in Chicago Public Schools and in Irvine ISD, and I am currently serving as a ESL instructional specialist for the Department of World Languages in Arlington ISD. So my journey as a newcomer student, so I went to school in Springfield, Massachusetts, in a predominantly white school. And that was my first indication that I can make a difference and advocate for these students. So my role as a newcomer was, you're gonna enter the classroom, the Hispanic kids are gonna sit in the back, Here's the worksheet that I have no clue how to fill it out. The only thing that I understood is name, which is name, it's nombre, and the date. That was it. And just color. There was a turning point in my life that makes me realize we can do better. We can do better for kids like me, the students like me, and for my peers that were in the same situation as me. And it's so curious because the teaching assistant that I was in the classroom, she was Puerto Rican, but she barely talked to us in Spanish. So it was like English only. When you had to ask to use the restroom, it was in English. If you do it in Spanish, they will give you permission. So I was just like, I am not going to ask permission, so I'm gonna hold it up until I get home. So that was my situation as a newcomer because my language was not honored. I wasn't able to even speak my language in the classroom, only with my peers during recess. In the classroom, we were just all quiet. And then, okay, so in the chat, or you can yourself, I want you to tell me how comfortable do you feel using or selecting culturally linguistically relevant text for your newcomer students. So if it's a one, not at all, a little, or I got this. Great. So we can move on. How about you, Sandy? She's not here. Okay. So one of the most important aspects of our culture, it's our native language. Our language is part of our identity. It's who we are, as human beings. So our language allows us to communicate with others, to express our feelings, to our beliefs. So when we lose our language, we lose our identity. And we're basically forced to adapt not only to a new language, but also a new culture. And that is something that we need to avoid for our newcomer students. Even if we don't speak their language, we can honor the language. We can allow them to use the language in the classroom. We can provide the resources in their home language so they can understand what you're telling them in the meantime, while they are learning English. So I want you to take a look at this map and think about where your newcomer students come from and what languages do they speak. How many of you know how many languages are in, let's say, Indonesia? No clue? I'm going to share a link in the chat so you can take a look at how many languages are per country. I don't want to alarm you, but there's like a lot of languages. Like in Indonesia, I believe there's 171. In China, there's like 300 languages. So if you have students that come from those countries, do not assume that they speak Chinese only. They can speak other dialects. I was so surprised because in Latin America, I'm going to show you right now. I want you to think, what languages come to your mind when you see this map, when you see Latin America?
I guess we always think Spanish, right?
We always think Spanish.
Spanish.
And
Portuguese. Because I know Brazil, because I've had some students from Brazil, so.
And it's very similar, but the pronunciation is totally different. So
Yeah.
Think about your newcomer students that come from Latin America. Do you know what language besides Spanish do they speak? Have you ever asked them? Everybody assumes Spanish, and that's the problem that we have when they come here, when they register. That they ask them they had to fill out the home survey, the homeland survey.
Yes.
When they speak a language other than Spanish, they just put it in the bilingual classroom because they come from any of those, countries. So besides Spanish, in Central South America, indigenous peoples speak multiple languages. So I want you to take a look at this map. And believe it or not, you probably have students from Central South America that speak an indigenous language as their first language, and it's not Spanish. I was surprised with Colombia. Colombia has so many indigenous languages. Guatemala has a lot of indigenous languages. El Salvador only has one. Mexico, Peru, Bolivia. Now, this is my passion, indigenous languages. I wanted to show you something really quick that we I'm currently doing in our district to honor the languages of our newcomer students. And these are communication tools. So when you have a newcomer in your classroom that does not speak English, you can provide them a document or just like a cheat sheet with some phrases in English and in their home language and with the visual. So students can start communicating with you. Even if they start pointing, you can ask them to, pronounce it after you. But just having his or her language in that document, that is powerful. If you look at the screen over here, the literacy questionnaire, that one, I believe, it's in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and we have it, I believe we have already 10 different languages. So that is a questionnaire that you send home in English and in their parents, in their home language. For you to know if they went to school in their home country, if they know how to read, what languages do they speak, their interest. This is something very simple to do, but super powerful.
I've done this with my kids. I've done that.
That is great. That is great.
I do like I did the questions, and then I also have like a who, what, when, where with pictures, and then above it is in the language that are most in what I was able to get translated. I did translate as much as I could.
Yeah, it's hard to find translators. So what I do, because our district is so big, we actually have 60-something languages, students from 90-something countries. So I reach out to teachers, to principals. I send emails, hey, I'm looking for somebody who can translate in this language. And that's how I'm able to have the binders in 10 different languages. But believe me, it's really hard. So the first picture in blue, the question is, how are you feeling? So this is for social and emotional learning, because sometimes the students cannot express, but you can provide them with pictures and they can point, or classroom labels or school labels around the school so they know where to go. I believe the one in the bottom is in Farsi and the one on top, I believe, is in Arabic. Okay, see, I cannot.
Looks like Arabic.
Okay, because one of them is in Urdu, but
Urdu,
I only speak English and Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to this part over here. Honoring newcomers' languages using culturally and linguistically relevant text. So one of the things that I advocate for is the curriculum. Curriculum writers, they need to create a more inclusive, representative, and equitable language arts curriculum that our students deserve. We need to incorporate books that mirror our students' heritage, their identity, their culture, and the language. And I know it's hard, banning the books here in Texas. There's a lot of books that we cannot utilize in the classroom, but we try our best. Honoring the languages and culture of newcomer students through culturally and linguistically relevant texts is a crucial aspect of creating an inclusive and supportive educational environment. When you incorporate these texts, you're reflecting their diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds, and you're validating and celebrating their identities, their experiences, their heritage. Sometimes I read books from other countries because I want to make sure that I understand what my students are going. Like sometimes they say, well, you don't know because you've never been in my situation. But when I read those books and I'm like, oh my God, this is what he's talking about. It's good to know because you have more empathy, more understanding for them. So what are the benefits when you're, incorporating this text? You're validating and you're empowering them, because you're representing them in the curriculum, and it empowers them by showcasing the languages, their culture, as a valuable contribution to the learning community. Also, when you expose them to text in their native language, they're familiar with, it's going to support the language development, the literacy skills, and vocabulary expansion. They can transfer from one language to another, believe it or not. Like, Spanish is not the only language that it's similar to English. There's others. And also through these texts, the students gain a deeper understanding of diverse cultures, fostering cultural competence in the classroom, empathy and respect from different perspectives. It's also important that your students read those books as well. Also, engagement and motivation. I remember when I was in Newcomer, the teacher gave me a book. Hey, listen, you have to summarize this. And I was just like, well, the book was about baseball and it's about a boy. So I hadn't played baseball. How am I going to connect with this? It was frustrating, and it's a boy. And I was just like, can I read a book about, girls or Barbie or whatever? I know you're going to read this one. Thank you. So number one, I didn't have a choice. Number two, I couldn't connect. I didn't even know how to play baseball. She gave me a sports book. It was hard. It was a challenge. And also, when you incorporate this text, you encourage your students to share the linguistic and the cultural knowledge with others. So students get to know each other. So when I say culturally, it's not using books translated in another language. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when I saw this cover from The Giver, El Dador, I was just like, El Dador. What does that mean? El Dador. And I was like, so how do you even translate The Giver? So it is translated, but it's not culture relevant to our students. It represents the language, but does not represent the culture. The same with the rainbow fish. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good that it's in different languages, but it's not culturally relevant. So the character in the text, they need to be like your students, like their family, the characters in the text are very much like your students and their family. They fit really well. They have the same experience, or the setting, the time and the place, it's where your students belong. That's what it means to be culturally relevant. Now we're going to take a look at some books, but before, I want to give you some of the questions that you can ask parents, and you're going to have a copy of this presentation. What languages does your child speak? You can send this home for them to answer what language or what languages are spoken at home, even if your child doesn't speak it, because sometimes parents speak other languages. What is your child's preferred language for speaking, for reading, or even for writing? What holidays do they celebrate at home? What holidays do you wish me as a teacher likes to recognize in the classroom and share with other students? Besides the holidays that they listed, any other traditions are important in your family? Just because, and I'm going to speak back for the Spanish-speaking countries. I remember when I was teaching in Chicago, a teacher came to me, oh, Feliz Dia de los Muertos. Happy, how do you say that in English? The date of the death. And I was just like, okay, yeah, what does that even mean? I don't celebrate that. No, every Spanish-speaking country celebrate Dia de los Muertos. So I was just like, okay, this is something that my students celebrate, so I need to know more about that. And also, what important beliefs and values does your family and culture share? This is questions that you can ask your students. Okay, so I'm going to show you the first book. This book is written in English and is also in Vietnamese, and it's intended for grade levels 1 through, I believe, 8th grade. As a nonfiction, it's about a girl who she was always wondering why her parents kept referring to Vietnam as her homeland. So her parents took her to Vietnam, and there she learned about her culture. The second one, which I love it, is a trilingual book, picture book, and it's about Daniel and Ismail. It tells the story of a Jewish boy and a Palestinian boy who grew up in a separate communities, and they became friends by chance playing soccer. And even though the families were, upset at the beginning, the power of conversation and playing soccer helps the boys overcome their differences. And this book is written in Spanish. I don't have the Spanish version. This one is in English, in Hebrew, and in Arabic. All right, another book. This one is from the Republic of Tanzania. How many of you have kids from Tanzania? It's written in English and Swahili, and the pictures are beautiful. They're very beautiful. The next one is from Palestine. This one is written in English and Arabic, and it's intended for first grade through fifth grade. I have two more over here. One is from Somalia, and the other one is from Cambodia. And if you are not familiar with the I See the Sun collection, this collection is amazingly beautiful. When you receive the copy of the presentation, you can click on the link. They have I See the Sun in Nepal, and it's written in English and in Nepali and Afghanistan, Myanmar, China. I believe they do have Mexico as well. I See the Sun in Mexico. I See the Sun in Russia and in China. And I think they have more. And the pictures are beautiful. Now, if you have Spanish-speaking students, I have from north to south, Rainbow Weaver, Las Tortillas. From north to south, I believe it's from Mexico. The Rainbow Weaver is from Guatemala. And La Fiesta de las Tortillas is from El Salvador. And it's so beautiful. And it's so pretty. My Diary from Here to There, El Único Destino, and A Movie in My Pillow. A Movie in My Pillow is from El Salvador, and it's written in poetry. It's very beautiful. El Último Destino, I believe it's the trajectory from kids from El Salvador, Guatemala. It's intended for middle school and high school students. It's very heavy. And My Diary from Here to There is the trajectory from Mexico to here to the United States. One of my favorite books that I have over here that I was telling Emily at the beginning, let me remove the blur so you can take a look at this one. I'm so sorry. Es El Bosque de Don Margarito. This is a trilingual book. Doña María Guadalupe tells the story of her father, which is Don Margarito. She recollects the tales of her family from, imagined tradition of preserving the wisdom of the forest. And instead works planting trees and learns the importance of environmental harmony. And I have some questions right here, some teaching ideas that you can utilize with this book, and a side-by-side anchor chart that you can utilize in the classroom. The book is in English, it's in Spanish, and it has a word in Quiche, which is imagined language. If you have students from Guatemala, ask them. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Another one of my favorites is from the Queen. This one is from Ecuador, and it has words in Quechua, the Queen of Water. It's about Maria Virginia. She was kidnapped from her Ecuadorian Indian village to work as a servant for a mestizo couple. So during her time living with this mestizo couple, she was frequently referred as stupid. And she's been told that she can only expect the life of a servant just because she was in this. She learns that her parents no longer want her, according to what this mestizo couple was telling her. And she attempts to determine that she didn't even know where she belongs to. So she was forced to start speaking her native language and learn Spanish. This book has like a dictionary, and in the teaching guide, just a dictionary that explains the differences between the Peruvian, the Ecuadorian, and the Bolivian Quechua. And when you receive the copy of the presentation, you're going to see all the resources that you can utilize with these books. Some other texts, Pipinahua, which is the language, the indigenous language from El Salvador. These three books right here are written in poetry. The two in the bottom, the poems are written in English, they're written in Spanish, and they're written in Nahuatl, which is the indigenous language. And you guys know how hard it is to translate poetry. I always say you don't translate poetry. Don't do that. This Jorge Guetta did a wonderful job. The other ones, Quiche Maya, which is from Guatemala. I have also Caminar, and I know Emily is very familiar with this book. It's from the Mayan tradition, and it has words in Cachiquel. And this is more for middle school and high school. And the last one, this one is from Argentina and has a dictionary of the casual words used in the book. So where can you find more of this text? How many of you are familiar with Diverse Books Finder? I love that website. I'm going to show you really quick. Let me see if I can. I'm looking this way because I can't like, I'm sharing this stuff. So when you go over here, let me share the folder with you. That way you can go to the slide and this is for you. It's a folder. Let me know. I'm going to show you. Once you get into this website, you go to search the collection. You're going to scroll down. Here are all the filters. I always do it by ethnicity. It's easier for me to do it by ethnicity than just searching one by one. So let's say I have a student from Brazilian. Now you mentioned that you have a lot of students from Brazil. So you're going to look over here. You have Pelé. And when you click on this, you can read the abstract, just a little blurb of it. Luis and Luisa, who has more, it was gonna let you know more about it. It's a fiction book, any child can read it. It's a bilingual, multilingual book. You can incorporate STEM. It said the ethnicity is Brazilian, the gender of of the kids, the race, and the prominence. Another website that I absolutely love, and I don't know if you are familiar, who is familiar with teachingbooks.net. It's a free website and you can download teaching guides. Can you see the screen? Can you see the teaching guides? Okay. So you can open an account. If not, you go for educators. So I am going to browse. You can browse by country. You can browse by grade level. So for instance, I am going to type Colombia. And you can browse by theme. You don't have to browse by country. Let's just select Biblioburro. It will let you know the grade level, the genre. You can see more details. If you can incorporate in other content areas, you can do that. If you scroll down, you're going to see resources. I love to go to the book guides and activities because I can see them in here, and it can give me ideas of what to teach, what text to cover, what standards, common core state standards to cover. Most of the teaching guides are common core standards. We have those standards everywhere. Not like in Texas, we have our own standards. So here you have a teaching guides. The next one is Lay and Low. How many of you are familiar with Lay and Low? I love Lay and Low. I love their teaching guides because with one book, they show you how to use it for math, how to use it in social studies, how to use it in science, in art, music. So I am going to scroll down. I'm just going to pick bilingual bestsellers. And for instance, I am going to select In My Family. And I can see the teaching guide. This one is going to give you the grade level, it's going to let you know if the book is in English and in other language, the vocabulary word, the themes, the background of the book. You can connect this with other books, the vocabulary, content specific, academic. Before reading, exploring the book, I love the questions because they're like from level 1 to level 4. I just love that. You can differentiate because if you have students that are really like starting, you can give them like 30 questions. But if you have students that they already master and they can move forward, you give them the extended thinking. Yes. And then over here, we have the interdisciplinary activities where it lets you know what you can do in the language art classroom with this book, the social studies, connections with the home, art. Some of them have math, some of them have science, and so on. There's just beautiful books. All right, so we want to give you the opportunity to break your rooms, or we can stay here and talk about it, to talk about this question. How am I incorporating culturally and linguistically relevant text impact your newcomer students' language and cultural identities? What challenges might arise when integrating this text in your classroom, in your teaching practice, and how can you address them? What specific actions can you take to honor the languages and culture of the students, besides just only using text? If you can unmute yourself, we can have the conversation here. Hi, Sandy.
You done?
I know for me teaching the newcomers this year, I tried to like read books like that they could see themselves in the book. And that really like helped them because then they could share more. They were the expert. And I did try to bring in, like I had my paras read if it was something that was connected to their culture so that they could share more than I was able to share, but then I got to learn as well. I did read Valentina's book and there was a word that was connected to my Ukrainian student because Yugoslavian, the language is kind of in the same area. So she was like, oh, that's the same in my language. And I was like, well, what do you think it is? And so then she asked me, well, do you have a book in Ukraine that you could share? And I was like, I don't have it yet, but I'll get it. So I'm going to surprise her because she'll be at my school next year and I'll be working with her. So I'm going to surprise her. I'm purchasing some books. So I try to like find books that my students can connect and see themselves.
Absolutely.
And then if they bring in things, I did have like students for the Day of the Dead. So I brought in some things and my one kid from Mexico, he was like all excited and he was like, so just trying to make them feel like they belong and are welcomed. I allow them to share as well. Anytime there's a holiday coming up or there's something going on, like they like to share those things. So I try to do those types of things now that we're getting a little more past, COVID, where you can bring in, say, because pre-COVID, I did do like a celebration and they all brought food in. And then they all shared something that they wanted to share with the group. So that helped with their speaking, but then they shared something. I did it like right before the shutdown. So hopefully in this coming year, I'll be able to do something like that with my newcomer class.
That is wonderful. You're reminding me when I was a teacher in Chicago, I was teaching the history of, Chicago and everything. So we had to start with the Native Americans. So I was reading The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. So I started reading and this boy was just like so excited and said, oh, I know what that is. That's a teepee. And he started talking. I belong to this tribe. I didn't even know he was Native American until I read the book. He was so excited. He was engaged. And I was like, oh, I like this. This is really working for this kid. So I started looking for in their cumulative folder where they're coming from. And I started like putting those books in my library and they're like sharing everything about themselves. We do this at home. And in Mexico, we do this. And in Ecuador, we do this. And Honduras, we do this. It was so fascinating.
Yeah, it's just fun to learn. Like I let them share all the time.
That is fabulous. Anyone would like to share? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to say too, Phil, the first thing I'm going to say is, Emily, I got to share a quick story. I don't know if I did share it on Twitter. I had just gotten your book, started reading it, and I was split between the high school and middle school my first year this year. I've taught other subjects. And I whatever the prompt was, this one girl who was in the district left and came back, had written something about how when she, whatever struggle, it was like only like maybe 4 sentences about, not having food and water as she, traveled to Long Island and like 1 meal a day. And I was trying to encourage her. I spoke to her after I had a chance to read it that night. I brought in your book, Emily, to her and then I had to go order I was like, do I wait for the Amazon copy to get my own? Because I just started reading yours. And I wound up tracking her down like 2 classes after, because I didn't want to be like, oh, it was only a small class at a time of like 8 children. And then oh no, before I didn't give it to her then. I encouraged her after I read it. I said, you really need, I'm just starting to read this book. You need to keep writing your story. This is fabulous. And she came back the next day and showed me like a page, how she continued her story. With that made me think of it. I gave her the book. And I think what was so relatable about your book, and especially at the high school level, it's hard to get a buy-in with those students. You know, you could, like, I spent a summer in Zacatecas and Morelia, Mexico, working at an orphanage, Casa Hogar, to school disabled. My friend works with DCS down there, but it's still hard to get buy-in from high school kids. I actually recently was this past week thinking about coming from a 4th grade level and knowing the importance of picture books, especially to introduce skills, and saying, you know what, I'm going back to my picture books for my high school ENL, ELA. My director comes from a social studies. She didn't teach ENL. And I'm like, you know what, I gotta go. I think I struggled last year because I didn't stay true to who I was on certain things, and going back to the picture books to incorporate the skills and using even these books for my students. There's that connection, because you can't, yes, you got to worry about, oh, this is baby, this is this, but it's how you present it. And the kids, like you said, Jennifer, the students need to see themselves, and if all of you said, need to see themselves at their level. I know Colorado has great lists of books. You know, they're, obviously mostly all just Spanish, depending on what the genre is. And that was a great list. I started reading those last summer, but the picture books are something that the children can my brand new ENLs can even just access more from the language standpoint. And it's showing them, it's showing them that you value them and who they are as people, in their culture, versus me just trying to make that verbal connection. It's that action words. It's your actions that are showing it. Hey, I've got these books. Let's do this as a class. So these sites have been great. So I want to say thank you. I'm sorry I jumped in so late. I got caught up. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's after 7.
Oh, I'm glad you joined us, but I think Sandy, and I'm glad you came on, Sandy, because I think Sandy can transition us into the next question. What challenges might arise? Because you are in a state that is targeting these beautiful books we're just talking about. So tell us, Sandy, how are you dealing with this? Uh-oh. Or sound. Sign language, Sandy.
Trying to figure out how to unmute.
I know.
You got this, Sandy. You got this.
I should be, maybe
If you click on your screen, your microphone should come up. No?
I just sent her a message to ask her to unmute, but I don't know what that means. I can mute you, but I can unmute you. Oh my gosh. But while she comes on, because I really know that she can really tell us a little more about this, but I mean, it's becoming a challenge to try to find that book that is really representing our students when it comes to their immigration status, their, any pronouns or anything like that. It's becoming challenging for us as teachers to be able to choose a book that is going to represent our students. So for a lot of teachers, their job is on the line, when they're trying to decide, do I really want to honor my students' authenticity and identities, or do I want to keep my job and continue teaching? Tell me, anybody else find themselves in that same boat? Like, I've had my lessons already dug into just because of a website that I was using. So it's just really scary. I do think we are in a very scary time where we're being told to honor our students' background, but at the same time they're pushing us not to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Like in Texas is happening the same thing. I'm very lucky to be in Arlington. We don't have any books banned yet. Like, we don't. And I include most of these books in the dual language curriculum. But before Sandy jumped in, I want to piggyback to what Patty was saying. It was so powerful what you said. you need to tell your story. You need to continue telling your story. Because if you don't tell your story, who else is going to? You cannot allow the student to, you cannot allow people to tell the story for your students. Because they were the ones who lived the experience, not you. For me to understand a lot about how my students got here and, understand their trajectory, like all the challenges that have overcome since they were little, I had to read a lot of books. I make connections with them through the books, and I say, okay, I understand how the students feel. I know, and I told them, don't be ashamed where you come from. Don't be ashamed of your culture, your language, because it's yours. It belongs to you. It's unique, Go ahead, Sandy.
I'm on. Whew. So as I'm hearing all these wonderful sites and even on Twitter, when people are showing all these wonderful books, I'm like, oh. So last year, teachers had to put all the books they were going to read with their groups or class on a list. That list was available to parents. It was out there. So if any parent questioned it, we had to pull the book and not read it until it passed their approval. I don't know what it's going to be like this year. I think there is a list already from our district. And if the book is not on the list, it really is, it's $5,000 and 5 years in jail, I believe. Yeah, yes. So sometimes I'm reading a book and my kids are like, what are you reading? And I'm like, look, I am reading this book. I can't give it to them. I can't show it to them. I mean, I can't tell them to read it. I can just say, look, I'm reading this book. And usually they'll ask me about it. Like Solito, they were always asking me, oh, so what happened to Javier? What happened? And I would kind of give them a little summary. And I said, you could go to the library. They may have it. And that's really how I'm getting around it, kind of leaving books out, kind of telling them, look, this is what I'm reading, until things change. But it is scary. It is sad that I am giving in to that fear, because, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to do, what I can for my kids. And I do, but it is scary. It's a scary time right now. And hopefully it will go away. As my uncle says, I'm an old man and everything will pass. This will pass. But meanwhile, I mean, I like books that are so really there's nothing in them, like The Front Desk. The other day I saw a book, To Kill a Mockingbird, and at the elementary level, I mean, the books are pretty basic, and our librarian has really had a job this year of going through every book. She gave me books on the Renaissance because they cannot be in their library anymore because, they're naked. David. So, yeah. So she has pulled all the books, and I've taken a lot of them because I can't let that go.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my deal. This is what I'm reading. These are books that are available, and hint.
But what I appreciate, Esmeralda, is that you gave, I think the 3 resources you gave us, if we can't find what we're looking for in one resource, we'll go to the other, and then we'll go to the other. So now I have one slide that has these 3 resources, which, by the way, there's 2 that I have heard of because they publish books and stuff, but I've never heard them as the resource for lessons and stuff like that, especially with the guided questions. So if there's a book that you're using and you need ideas, those resources that Esmeralda shared, I think are very helpful, because like if there's a book, for example, that La Abuelita, it's banned in several states, right? If I've used it before, now I have to use another book. I can go to one of these websites to kind of come up with the lessons that I need if I need to change the lessons. But thank you. That slide in itself to me was such a big help.
Yes. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited to
My
like
3 go-to
look in.
websites. Those are my go-to websites. Like I select books about immigration. And I look a lot for Rene Colato Lainez. He has a lot of books about immigration. immigration experiences, how to get that. Also has a lot of books about the life in Salvador. No Somos de Aquí, which is one of my favorites. When I read
Oh,
that book, I remember we were reading at the same time. I had so many emotions. Like I cry, I laugh. It was a lot, but the reality is like those are the experiences that our students are going through or went through, and it's important for the teachers to know about that. It's sad that we're under the microscope, which books can I read, which books cannot read. And everything is about our students need to pass the state assessment. Well, how about empowering our students for the future?
yeah.
That critical literacy. But we don't make those decisions. In the folder that I shared, there's a list of books and teaching guides as well, besides the websites that I shared with you. You have a
Yeah.
copy of the presentation.
If you don't mind, I went ahead and added this link for the folder that you gave us onto. We have a PLC form that every month we add resources to it. So I went ahead and added to it, and I can
That's
share
fantastic.
right now if you guys want me to, while you close if you want to.
That's fantastic. So reflection, what are we gonna do? This is what you're gonna do. We're gonna do a chat waterfall. I know we don't have a lot of people, but I'd love to do this with participants. You will have 1 minute to write. Just don't write it yet. Just wait. One word. Think about one word that comes to your mind that express your learning today. And I'm just gonna count. And then I'm gonna let you know when you're gonna type your word, okay? So I'm gonna count. I'm gonna let you know, hey, type your word, but do not click enter. You can type your word. Please stop typing. Submit. Inspire, tools, hopeful identity. Thank you. Now, anyone would like to share the word and explain why you chose that word? Anyone?
I can share. When you said at the beginning, when they lose their language, they lose their identity. How important it is. I did do identity maps with my kids. I learned at a diverse PD that I was part of for a year. These identity maps, and my kids like loved them. And then when I put them on my door, they were like so excited to see them outside on the door. And I caught other kids walking by and like stopping and getting to know about them. So I feel like they need to be identified. You have to keep their identity of who they are as students.
That is so powerful. Where were you when I was in the classroom, when I was a newcomer? Where were you? Not my teacher. So that's important that you mentioned that, because like I mentioned at the beginning, my focus on research and my PhD is indigenous languages. In Puerto Rico, we used to have an indigenous languages, but they devalued it. Everything was Spanish and English. So we don't have the language anymore. We do have words in the vocabulary, but we don't know the alphabet. We don't know nothing about it. And it's part of our identity. So how am I going to say, oh, I am 1/3 indigenous, but I don't have the culture, I don't have the language. So how are we going to say that it's part of my identity if I don't have it? So you lose your language, you lose your identity.
Which my kids, I do allow them, like they would say, oh, it's this in my language. I even just now I'm doing like reading intervention groups, but I had the student, she was like, well, in Bulgarian, it's this. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said it, so I let the kids teach me how to say it, and, just so that they feel, and then they make a connection, and then they'll remember it.
And that is also powerful. In the Spanish-speaking countries, we don't speak the same Spanish. Like I know Emily, she speaks Spanish. I do speak Spanish, but we don't speak the same Spanish. So
well,
when
same Arabic.
Yeah.
Arabic too, because
very
I was
cool.
in Hamtramck and it was Yemenis Arabic.
Oh my goodness.
And now I have kids from Iraq and it's their, Arabic. So like I learned words in Yemeni, but I used it and they're like, oh, well, that's similar to like ours. Like it's kind of similar, but like I had to learn like there was two different ones. There's one for girls and there's one for boys. You say it different ways, but like I learned words there that I would use all the time. And then I went to a district now and when I first started, I would want to use that word. Because yalla means let's go, come on, yalla. And my whole school was pretty much all Yemenis, Arabic kids, so I used it a lot. And so when I went over there, I would catch myself wanting to say it. I'm like, no, wait, they're gonna look at me like, but I did have Arabic kids and I did teach them, like, oh, I know this word. But when I learn their words, they feel excited too.
Yes.
Well,
That is
Esmeralda,
absolutely
before we close, I want to ask just one thing since I know
Sorry.
since I know you're working on your PhD and about this topic of identity and literature. How important is really to choose a book that, yes, it represents our students' experiences, but it's not written by someone who doesn't deserve to tell that story?
That is so important. I am the kind of person that when I look at the author, I make sure that the author is from the country that is described in the book, or the person spend time living those experiences with the people in that country. Because oftentimes we find a lot of authors that they just write books and okay, I'm just gonna pick, for example, Puerto Rico. Every time I read a book and I'm like, oh, this is not true. It's, for me, the facts are, for the students, the same. It is important. I always read the author's biography just to make sure that the person is from that country, or it's related, or lived there for so many years, that lived experience and everything. Because when people start writing books just for monetary purposes, I don't buy the books, just to be honest. I do not buy the books.
Yeah, I think it will be a matter of doing your homework and researching it, because like the book that you share about the Queen of Water, I quickly went to Goodreads, wanted to add that book to my list. But before I did that, I looked at the author, and it's Laura Rousseau. So I'm like, is she really, does she really have this background? So I stopped myself, right? That's a great title. That's a great story. But does she deserve to tell that story? So I guess as teachers, we do need to do that kind of homework before.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, before I picked the book, just to mention, she wrote the book besides the girl that is in the book. The girl told the story and she wrote the book.
Nice.
That's why I recommend, if it's from like somebody else,
right? It's a collaboration.
Yes.
They provided the platform. Like I did read a story like that too. Oh my gosh, where is it? Rocio's story. She's from Guatemala. And so the author helped. They wrote it together. So that in itself, yes, I kind of agree that they help with the storyteller to tell a story. But I do believe that teachers, you need to do the homework, that just because it's in Spanish, or just because it's written by someone who speaks Spanish, doesn't really mean it's an authentic story. But yeah,
absolutely, that is super important. When I am selecting the books for the curriculum, the lead and I, we're always like looking, so who is the author? We're reading the biography, because that is powerful. I just want to share a quote before we leave today, and I have a giveaway. Since we only have 3 participants, I'm going to give a book to each of you. I'm going to show you the books in a minute. So when students can connect to books, they are more likely to read. The more the students engage with text, the better readers they become.
wow, that
and if
is
powerful. Don't do the same thing that the teacher did to me. She gave me a book about baseball and a boy, and I'm like, so yeah, okay. So here are the books. Going Home. This one is in English Vietnamese. Daniel, I have them over here. And this one, what I love about this one is like you open it the other way because it's written in English, in Arabic, and Hebrew. You don't open it like this. This is the back. Actually has the barcode over here. Going Home. It's in English and Vietnamese. And the other one, Caminar, which is from Guatemala and it has word in Quiche. So you can either pick or we can do wheels of things. Let me add Patty over here. I'm gonna add Patty.
See,
And
see, it was worth it.
can you see my screen? So
Yes.
wait, I have it on Sandy. Okay, so the first one is gonna be Going Home. And it's for Sandy. Sandy, I'm going to send you my email so you can send me your email address so I can mail it to you, okay? All right, let's do Daniel and Ismay. It's between Patty and Jennifer. Patty, you get this one. Yay! And then I'm gonna send you Caminar to Jennifer, okay? Let me put a sticky note so I don't, and I'm gonna put my email over here.
That's wonderful. Great books. I'm interested in that one that you read backwards. I need to get it. I started accumulating ever since I've had Arabic students. I'm making a goal to have literature because I was like, I've always, okay, let's have it in Spanish. And I have a whole bookshelf of books in Spanish. And boom, I get students from Yemen. I didn't have one book. I was like, oh, what a shame. I know. I look at Jennifer, don't you do that face. But I did a donors choose and I ended up getting a lot of donations. So I do have a few books now, but hey.
It's okay, Emily. Like I have no Ukrainian books and I had one Ukrainian student and she advocates for herself. And she was like, when I read Valentina's book, she was like, well, do you have a book in Ukraine that you can read and I can help with the words? And I was like, no, but I'll get it, so because it was towards the end of the year. So I was like, well, I'll get it. So I'm going to surprise her.
That's awesome. All right, guys, it's 8:00. I've got my daughter and cousin here waiting on me.
Thank you so much.
You guys, we need to thank, Esmeralda, your presentation was just right on for what we are doing here. It's our PLC, right, guys? When we get together, we always talk about how do we honor our students? How do we bring this language and this culture out? Because those are the most vulnerable students we work with. So if you go in the chat early on, I shared the link that has that form that has all the resources. So we have your presentation added to it. And I really, really appreciate you taking your time to share.
Emily, can you reshare that because the chat doesn't show it to me anymore because it's from early on. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll share it again. This is the document that you'll see resources from, I don't know, if you go back from January, I think, when we started, let me see how far it goes. In November, that's when it started. From November till today, you'll have resources per grade level.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Anyone on NL Summit tomorrow? NL Summit?
Yes, I'm going to a couple.
Right. Yes.
Nice.
I know. I just had to look what time. I'm like, I think it's tomorrow. So it's like 10 a.m.
I thought it was last
I
Saturday.
have another webinar.
Yeah, I thought it was last Saturday. I
thought so too. And I thought yours was tomorrow. And I'm like looking, I'm like, where's
it's vacation. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget
Bye.
to send me your mail address so I can send you the books this week. Please,
Okay.
Patty,
Thank you.
Sandy, and Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Gracias, Esmeralda. Gracias por tu tiempo y por